This morning, nearly every Democrat who participated in a video encouraging members of the U.S. military to refuse illegal orders has received bomb threats to their homes or district offices. And so far, those threats have showed no sign of slowing down.
It was instantaneous. I mean, hundreds, if not at this point, thousands of calls, emails, texts, obviously online postings.
Just a day after the president accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior, which he said could be punishable by death, the threats are piling up.
Capitol Police came to us and said, you know, we're going to put you on 24/7 security. We've got law enforcement out in front of my house.
Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
Let's be clear about what the president is responding to. They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually,
every single
can refuse an illegal order, which
but
is
they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not.
Okay, so let me ask you something. What happens when you break the rules in court? Like, seriously, what do they do to you? They fine you, right? Maybe they give you a warning. And if you keep doing it, if you just refuse to listen, eventually they throw you in jail. That's how it works for everyone. That's the deal. You violate a court order, you face consequences. Pretty simple stuff. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. We're watching this play out right now with President Trump. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Another Trump court story. Another day, another headline. But this one's different because we're not talking about fines anymore. We're not talking about warnings. We're talking about a judge, a sitting judge, openly threatening to put Trump behind bars. And not for the trial itself, but for what he's saying outside the courtroom. Let me paint you a picture here. Trump's in the middle of his New York criminal trial, the hush money case. You've heard about it. And there's this thing called a gag order. Basically, the judge told him, hey, you can't talk about certain people involved in this trial. You can't go after the jury. You can't attack witnesses. Pretty standard stuff in high-profile cases, right? It's supposed to protect the integrity of the trial, keep things fair, make sure nobody gets intimidated. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Anyone of good faith who looks at the situation here sees what is real, which is that the President of the United States has tested the boundaries of the law in ways that we've never seen before, including in responding to a simple statement of the law, which tells us a whole lot. But look, he's got a track record. And when I was serving in the Navy in the summer of 2020, what we saw was a Secretary of Defense in Mark Esper who stood up to unlawful orders, blatantly unlawful orders, to shoot at peaceful protesters, to invoke the Insurrection Act when it wasn't appropriate to do so. He's got a track record.
But Trump, he's not having it. He keeps posting on social media. He keeps making statements. He keeps going after people connected to the case. And every time he does it, the judge hits him with contempt, fines him $1,000, then does it again and again. We're now at 10 times, 10 separate violations, 10 moments where Trump looked at that court order and basically said, yeah, no thanks. And here's the thing that's blowing my mind. The Judge Juan Merchan, just came out and said it. He said if Trump keeps this up, jail time is on the table. Not maybe, not possibly. He literally said the court is making arrangements in case they need to lock him up. Can you believe this? We're talking about potentially jailing President Trump because he won't stop posting. Now I know what half of you are thinking. You're thinking, good, finally, someone's holding him accountable. The rules apply to everyone, right? Nobody's above the law. If he keeps violating the gag order, throw him in jail like you would anyone else. That's justice. That's how it should work. And look, I get that perspective. I really do. And then the other half of you are losing your minds right now. You're thinking this is political persecution. This is a witch hunt. They're trying to silence him. They're trying to stop him from defending himself. They're weaponizing the courts to take down a political opponent. And honestly, I get why both sides feel the way they do. This isn't some simple black and white situation here, because this isn't just about a gag order anymore. This is about something way bigger. This is about what happens when the legal system collides with politics at the highest level. This is about whether Trump's going to back down or whether he's going to keep pushing until they actually do it, until they actually put him in a cell. And that's the real question here, isn't it? And let me tell you, the stakes here are insane. We're in the middle of one of the most intense political moments in modern history. Trump's legal battles are everywhere. His supporters see him as a martyr. His critics see him as a criminal. And now we've got a judge saying one more time and you're going to jail. Not a fine, not a slap on the wrist. Jail, actual jail time for a sitting president. So what happens next? Does Trump stop? Does he finally listen to the court order and stay quiet? Or does he double down like he always does? Does he dare them to do it? And if they do, if Judge Merchan actually sends Trump to jail, what does that mean for the trial? What does that mean for politics? What does that mean for this country? Because here's the reality. If Trump goes to jail, even for a day, even for a few hours, it's going to be the biggest political story of the decade. It'll dominate every news cycle. It'll fire up his base like nothing else, and it'll give his opponents exactly what they've been waiting for. Proof. They'll say that he's out of control, that he can't follow the rules, that he's unfit. But will it actually happen? That's what everyone wants to know. Is this judge really going to follow through? Or is this just another empty threat that Trump's going to ignore? And what does it say about our justice system? If a judge makes a threat like this and then doesn't back it up, what does that do to the credibility of the courts? This is wild, people. This is actually happening. And we need to break down exactly what's going on here, why the judge is threatening jail time, and what it all means for Trump and for all of us. So stick with me. Let's dive into this mess. Because what you're about to hear, what's really going on behind the scenes, is way more shocking than what they're telling you on the mainstream news. And trust me, you need to understand this. Alright, so let's get into the details here, because this story is way more complicated than it looks on the surface. And honestly, most people are missing the bigger picture. They're focused on whether Trump should go to jail or not, but that's not really the question we should be asking. The question is, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where a judge is openly preparing to lock up President Trump? Let's rewind for a second. The trial we're talking about is the New York criminal hush money case. This is about payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels back in 2016. The prosecution's argument is that Trump and his team falsified business records to cover up these payments. Trump says it's all nonsense, says he did nothing wrong, says this whole thing is politically motivated. And yeah, we can debate the merits of the case all day long. People have very strong opinions on both sides. But here's where it gets interesting. When this trial started, Judge Juan Merchan issued a gag order. And gag orders aren't unusual. They happen all the time in high-profile cases. The idea is simple. You don't want defendants or lawyers or witnesses running to the media and poisoning the jury pool. You don't want people making inflammatory statements that could prejudice the trial. So the judge says, hey, everyone involved, zip it. Don't talk about the jury. Don't attack witnesses. Keep your comments to yourself until this is over. And for most people, that's the end of it. You follow the order. You keep quiet. You let your lawyers do the talking in court. But Trump? Well, Trump's not most people. From day one, he's been treating this gag order like a suggestion, like it's optional. He's been posting on Truth Social. He's been making statements to reporters. He's been going after Michael Cohen, the prosecution's star witness. He's been talking about the jury. And every single time, Judge Merchan has found him in contempt. Now here's the part that's driving people crazy. The fines are $1,000 each time. $1,000 for someone like Trump. That's pocket change. That's nothing. That's less than what some people spend on dinner. So critics are saying, okay, the fines aren't working. He's just going to keep paying them and keep violating the order. What's the point? What's the deterrent here? And that's exactly what Judge Merchan is saying now. He came right out and said it. He said the fines aren't enough. He said this represents a direct challenge to the rule of law. And he said, if this continues, jail time is the next step. Let me read you what the judge actually said, because it's pretty stunning. He said these violations represent a direct challenge to the rule of law, and he warned that jail is truly the last resort, but would happen if Trump doesn't comply with court orders. He also said future offenses could result in incarceration. And here's the kicker. Court representatives confirmed they were making necessary arrangements in case Trump is jailed. They're actually preparing for it. This isn't a bluff. This isn't posturing. They're legitimately getting ready for the possibility. So why is Trump doing this? Why is he risking jail time just to keep posting? Well, there's a few theories here. One theory is that he genuinely believes he has a First Amendment right to defend himself publicly. He thinks the gag order is unconstitutional. He thinks it's silencing him during a critical time when he needs to be able to respond to attacks. And from his perspective, maybe he's got a point. I mean, should a gag order stop someone from defending their own reputation? That's a legitimate constitutional question. But there's another theory. And honestly, this one makes more sense to me. Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that every time he violates the gag order, it generates headlines. It keeps him in the news. It fires up his base, who sees him as a victim of a rigged system. And if the judge actually throws him in jail, that's the ultimate proof. His supporters will say that the system is corrupt, that they're trying to silence him, that this whole thing is political persecution. It plays right into his narrative. Think about it. What would happen if Trump goes to jail? Even for a day, even for a few hours, the images alone would be everywhere. Trump in handcuffs, Trump in a cell, Trump being treated like a common criminal, and half the country would be outraged. They'd see it as proof that the deep state or the establishment or whatever you want to call it is weaponizing the courts against him. His fundraising would explode. His poll numbers might even go up. It would become the defining moment of his presidency, his second term. It would be all anyone talks about. And that's the trap Judge Merchan is in. If he doesn't follow through on the threat, Trump wins. He looks weak. The gag order becomes meaningless. Trump keeps violating it with no real consequences. But if he does follow through, if he actually jails Trump, then Trump still wins in a different way. He becomes a martyr. He gets to play the victim. And the trial itself becomes even more of a circus than it already is. Let's talk about the specifics of what Trump's been saying, because that matters too. He's made comments about the jury. He suggested they're biased. He's talked about juror safety and trial integrity in ways that the judge says could intimidate them. And that's serious stuff. I mean, think about being on that jury. You're already under intense pressure. You know the whole world is watching. And then the defendant, who happens to be President Trump with millions of loyal followers, starts making statements that could be interpreted as threats. Yeah, I can see why the judge is concerned about that. Trump has also gone after Michael Cohen repeatedly, called him a liar, attacked his credibility, questioned his motives. Now Cohen's a witness in this case. He's testifying against Trump. And yeah, Cohen's got a complicated history. He's got credibility issues. He's been to prison himself. Trump's lawyers are going to tear into him on cross-examination. But there's a difference between attacking a witness in court, where it's fair game and part of the process, and doing it on social media, where you're potentially influencing public opinion and maybe even intimidating the witness. Here's what's really wild though. Trump's been held in contempt 10 times now. 10. That's not normal. That doesn't happen in regular cases. Usually after the first or second violation, defendants get the message. They stop. They follow the order. They realize the judge is serious. But Trump just keeps going. It's like he's testing the system, seeing how far he can push before someone actually stops him. And so far, nobody's really stopped him. And Judge Merchan is clearly fed up. You can tell from his statements. You can hear it in his tone. He's saying, look, I've tried fines. They're not working. You're forcing my hand here. And the fact that the court is making arrangements for potential jail time tells you everything you need to know. This isn't just talk anymore. This is real. This is actually being planned. But here's where it gets even more complicated. We're in the middle of a heated political moment. Trump is serving his second term in office. The trial is happening while he's still president. And regardless of what you think about the case itself, regardless of whether you think he's guilty or innocent, you have to admit that jailing a sitting president over gag order violations would be unprecedented. It would be a huge deal. It would raise all kinds of constitutional questions that nobody really has answers to. Can you even jail a sitting president? What does that look like? Does the Secret Service go with him? Do they set up some kind of special arrangement? Who's in charge while he's locked up? How long can they hold him? These aren't theoretical questions anymore. These are real questions that people in that courthouse are actually trying to figure out right now. And honestly, nobody really knows the answers because we've never been here before. There's no playbook for this. So what happens next? Does Trump back down? Does he finally stop violating the gag order now that jail is actually on the table? Or does he dare the judge to do it? Does he call the bluff? And if Merchan follows through, if he actually orders Trump to be taken into custody, what does that look like? How long would he be held? Where would he go? And what would the political fallout be? These are the questions that are keeping people up at night. Okay, so let's break this down into the key points you need to understand about this whole situation. Because there's a lot of noise around this story, and I want to cut through it and give you the real deal on what's happening and why it matters. Let's make this as clear as possible. Point number 1. The legal side of this is pretty straightforward. Trump violated a court order multiple times. 10 times, in fact. The judge issued a gag order. Trump ignored it. The judge found him in contempt and fined him. Trump kept ignoring it. And now the judge is saying, okay, fines aren't working, so jail time is next. From a pure legal standpoint, this makes sense. You can't just let someone repeatedly violate court orders with no real consequences. If you do, the whole system breaks down. The courts lose their authority. So yeah, legally speaking, Judge Merchan is well within his rights to threaten jail time here. But, and this is a big but, We're not dealing with a normal defendant here. We're dealing with President Trump, someone who is currently serving his second term in office, someone with massive political influence, someone whose supporters see him as a victim of a corrupt system, someone who has millions of people hanging on his every word. And that changes everything, because this isn't just about legal procedure anymore. It's about politics. It's about power. It's about what message this sends to the country and to the world. Point number 2. Let's talk about what this means for the trial itself. If Trump goes to jail, even for a short time, it's going to completely dominate the proceedings. The trial will become about the jailing, not about the actual charges. Every news outlet will be covering it nonstop. It'll be the only thing anyone talks about. Trump's lawyers will probably argue that it prejudiced the jury, that it made it impossible for him to get a fair trial, that the jury can't separate what they think about the gag order violations from what they think about the actual charges. And honestly, they might have a point there. And then there's the jury itself. These people are already under enormous pressure. They know they're deciding a historic case. They know millions of people are watching. They know their names might eventually become public. And now, if Trump goes to jail over the gag order violations, they're going to know that too. How does that affect their thinking? Does it make them more likely to convict because they see Trump as someone who doesn't respect the law? Or does it make them more sympathetic because they see him as someone being persecuted by an overzealous judge? We don't know, but it definitely has an impact one way or another. Point number 3. The political implications here are massive. If Trump goes to jail, his supporters are going to lose their minds. They already think this whole trial is a sham. They already think the system is rigged against him. They already believe this is political persecution. And jail time would confirm everything they believe. It would prove, in their eyes, that the establishment is willing to do anything to stop Trump. The fundraising would go through the roof. The outrage would be off the charts. And it would solidify Trump's narrative that he's fighting against a corrupt system on behalf of regular people. But on the flip side, Trump's critics would see this as vindication. They'd say, see, he thinks he's above the law. He thinks the rules don't apply to him. He thinks he can do whatever he wants without consequences. And now he's facing consequences like anyone else would. They'd argue that this proves the system works, that nobody, not even a president, can just ignore court orders without repercussions. And that narrative would energize his opponents too. It would give them ammunition to argue that Trump is unfit for office. So politically, this is a lose-lose situation for everyone except maybe Trump himself, because he knows how to turn any controversy into fuel for his political movement. He's done it 1,000 times before. Every indictment, every court appearance, every legal setback, it just makes his supporters more loyal, more convinced that he's the victim, more determined to stand by him. It's actually pretty remarkable when you think about it. Point number 4. Let's talk about the precedent this sets. If Judge Merchan actually jails Trump, even briefly, it would be unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this before. Sure, presidents have faced legal issues, but jailing a sitting president over gag order violations in a criminal trial, that's new territory. That's uncharted waters. And it raises all kinds of questions. What does this mean for future presidents? What does this mean for the separation of powers? What does this mean for how we handle high-profile political figures in the legal system? Some people would argue this is a good thing, that it shows our system works, that nobody's above the law, that even the most powerful person in the country has to follow court orders like everyone else. And you know what? That's a fair argument. If we're going to have a functioning justice system, it has to apply equally to everyone, rich or poor, powerful or powerless, president or not. The law is the law. But others would say this is dangerous, that it opens the door to political prosecutions, that it allows judges to jail political opponents on technicalities, that it turns our justice system into a weapon that can be used against anyone who's politically inconvenient. And that's a fair argument too, because once you start jailing political figures, where does it stop? What's to prevent the next administration from going after their opponents? What's to prevent this from becoming the norm? These are legitimate concerns. The truth is, we're in uncharted waters here. And whatever happens next is going to set a precedent that affects how we handle these situations for decades to come. This isn't just about Trump. This is about establishing the rules for how we deal with powerful political figures who get caught up in the legal system. Future generations are going to look back at this moment and study it. So here's where we are right now. Trump's been held in contempt 10 times. The judge has openly threatened jail time. The court is making arrangements in case it happens. And we're all waiting to see what Trump does next. Does he finally back down and follow the gag order? Or does he keep pushing until the judge actually follows through? What do you think is going to happen? My guess? Trump doesn't back down. He never does. He's going to keep posting. He's going to keep making statements. and he's going to dare Judge Merchan to put him in jail. Because Trump understands something that a lot of people miss. In his world, in the world of politics and media and public opinion, being jailed over this would actually help him. It would make him a martyr. It would prove his point about the system being rigged, and it would generate more attention and support than anything else could. It's political gold for him. And Judge Merchan, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he follows through, he creates a political firestorm that could overshadow the entire trial. If he doesn't, he looks weak and the gag order becomes meaningless. There's no good option here. He's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. It's an impossible situation. Here's what I think happens. Trump violates the gag order again, probably soon, maybe even tomorrow. The judge holds him in contempt again, and then we'll see. Maybe Merchan finally pulls the trigger and orders him jailed. Maybe he backs down and just keeps issuing fines. But either way, this story is far from over. This is just getting started. And that's what makes this so wild. We're watching legal history being made in real time. We're watching a confrontation between a judge and a president that nobody knows how to resolve. We're watching a trial that's about so much more than the charges themselves. It's about power and authority and who gets to make the rules. So what's the takeaway here? Simple. This isn't just about a gag order. This isn't just about hush money payments. This is about power. This is about who gets to set the rules and who has to follow them. This is about what happens when politics and law collide at the highest level. And we're all caught in the middle of it watching this unfold. And we're all about to find out how this ends. Will Trump finally respect the court's authority? Will the judge actually follow through on his threat? Or will this whole thing spiral into an even bigger constitutional crisis? Stay tuned, because this story is about to get even crazier. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. This is history in the making, right here.